Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You've joined me today down by Sligachan on a very wintry but beautiful, like I mean incredibly beautiful, amazing light on the mountains. Today what we're going to be doing some long exposures, extreme long exposures of some beautiful waterfalls with some big mountains in the background. Fingers crossed it all works out. I've got a good feeling about this one. Alright, so I've made it to the waterfalls and they are looking sweet. What I am going to do though is I'm going to head up to the top waterfall and I'm going to work my way down. The reason being, at the moment the sun is out above the mountain and that's going to cause a really bright spot in the sky. But I know from experience and time being here and shooting that what happens when it gets to about 1:30 is the sun comes behind the mountains, so that means I'm not going to get that bright spot in the sky, so hopefully I'll get better exposures. The further I go up, the more likely that sun is to be behind the mountains. And it also gives me a chance to have a little look at the river and the rapids and have a little think about how each one may look, different compositions, and how I'm going to work with the river. So I'm going to head up a little bit higher now and see what I can find. So simply a stone's throw away, I've got this waterfall here. And one thing I love about this waterfall is this natural dip in the earth, which almost frames the mountain in the background. It really draws your eye in. There's one issue with this waterfall though, and that's this tree. It's really distracting. In the shots I've taken in the past, it doesn't complement the composition, it really distracts from the composition. But I have got this amazing array of water coming down from the right, coming straight on, which acts as a perfect guide up into the mountains, up at the top. And there's even a little bit of snow on the top right now, and it's looking absolutely beautiful. But again, there is more. So I'm going to head up a little bit higher and see the next waterfall. So I've made it to the first of the waterfalls, the last one up. And I'm doing two things right now, just to let you know. First of all, I'm testing how the microphone picks up my voice against all the surrounding sounds. So if it's working well, write in the comments below and let me know. This waterfall is probably one of my favorites, but there's one issue. It's not complemented by the midground the same way the last waterfall was. And I'll show you why. But the reason why the midground in this image doesn't really complement the mountains the same way as the last one is it's a line across, and what's actually happening is it's blocking off the bottom of the mountain. But the waterfall itself kind of makes up for it. And this is going to be the first waterfall I photographed today. So the first thing I like to do when I come to a place like this, where the difference can be 1 foot between a great photo and a bad photo, is to walk around with my camera before I set up any tripods or anything like that. So I walk around and I check out different points and I have a little thinking time and make sure that I'm getting the best of the position I'm in and the location I'm at, the best composition, the one that complements all the different elements and makes them work together. And that's what I'm going to do now. So I think I found my composition. So what I did to make sure that I keep it is I've put this rock here to sort of mark where the center of my tripod's going to be. So my tripod's going to be here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot off onto this waterfall, and I'm going to have it on a nice diagonal leading up to this rock here, and then this rock hopefully is going to complement that peak in the background, and it's going to act like a, you know, a mirror image of the main mountain. And hopefully with this composition, I'm sort of eliminating how bad that mid-ground is and how much that really distracts from the mountains in the background. And as you can see from this angle, the big hot spot in the sky is gone now. It might be because the clouds are thickened up, and it might be because the sun's a little bit further around, but that hot spot's gone, and that's really going to work better for my long exposure. So all I'm going to do now is start to get the camera set up and see what I can do. So what I've done now is I put my polarizer on the front, and I'm going to get my phone out and I'm going to calculate how long the exposure is going to be so that I know how to adjust it and what to set it for, how many minutes. I'll open my favourite app for this, Photo Pills. Then what I do is I make sure that I have the correct exposure on my camera. I dial it into Photo Pills, say that I've got a 10-step on, and then it'll give me how many minutes it's going to take to expose this image correctly. So I've dialed in all the settings, and that's going to give me a 2.8 second exposure. Now I'm going to leave it in for a little bit longer, because what I've added is a freestop graduated neutral density filter, which is obviously going to make it take a little bit longer. But I do want that sky to be slightly underexposed, and I've got a feeling rain is on the way. So I'm going to get this quickly done, and then hopefully end up with a beautiful result. There is one thing never forget to ever do, and that is close your viewfinder, cover your viewfinder, do whatever you can to it, because if you don't cover it, you'll end up with light bleeding through the back of the camera, and that will ruin your image. Trust me, done it many times, many times. So all I have to do is go like this, and nice and closed, and yeah, put it onto timer, set the timer on this, and I'll see you when it's done. So I moved away from the river, one, because I'd finished and I had to pack up because, one minute, the heavens are just about to open. You can probably see behind me where there was a mountain, now I've just got grey, dark, drizzly, which is going to look nice if it wasn't raining where I am right now. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So I didn't really give you a full explanation on what I just did there. I sort of rushed through it because I could see the rain forming and getting closer. But what I did is I had it on ISO 64, f11. I focused on the mountain, so I pretty much focused to infinity, which gives me a nice depth of field all the way through the image, so everything's pretty much sharp. I did a 2:08 exposure, which is slightly underexposed, but what it has exposed for is the highlights. So that means the river. So the river, there's nothing blown out. There's nothing blown out in the sky. Everything is nice. And because I'm shooting with the camera I'm shooting with, it's got such a dynamic range in that image. So what I can do is I can actually pull the shadows up and retrieve that detail in the shadows. So I can end up with a properly exposed image that hopefully looks beautiful. I looked at the results on the back of the camera, which is in RAW and it's not been edited yet, and it's still the ingredients, not a baked cake. And it looks good. It looks really nice. And I imagine once I've got it into Photoshop and I've had a little mess around with it, it's going to look even better. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head down a little bit to the next waterfall and wait for this rain to pass. And hope that it's not too heavy, because today I decided not to bring my waterproof trousers, which is always a bad idea on the Isle of Skye. Always. But time to move on and keep this going. So I've managed to shelter myself kind of in the rain, sort of crouched down behind a rock, but there is an amazing amount of mist on the top of the mountains right now, and with a long exposure hopefully I'll be able to get some detail from the peaks as it passes, but also get that mysterious mist. Fingers crossed. all we can hope for. But the waterfall, this is my favourite of the 3 waterfalls. This is the one that has the most promise, has the most favour. There's only one element I don't like, and that's that tree. You know which tree I'm on about, I showed you before. But right now the mountains are looking absolutely epic, so I need to get set up super fast. Here we go. That is going to be a 4:16 exposure. Another little top tip for doing this: every time you've got a filter ring, especially like the Nissi, where you can stack different filters, it's always best to start with your 10 stop, because you don't want any light to bleed through. And on the back of your 10 stop filter, it's got this little foam pad, so that's designed to go right up against your filter rig so that you don't have any light bleeding through. Because any light bleeding through, i.e. ruined image. So for this image, I've done a very similar thing as before. What I've done is I've got it on f11, I've focused on the mountain distance, I've got it on ISO 64, and then with these, with the 10 stop on top, because the light's now different from before, it gives me a 4:16 exposure. So I've set the timer on photopills, and I've set my trigger so it's gone, and it's going now. And all I'm going to do is wait for that time, finish it, and then let that process. So for this shot, I'm actually going to change my tactic a little bit. I'm going to wait until the mountains come out a little bit more, and then I'm going to take the image again. But I'm going to change my filter setup a little bit. What I am going to do is I'm going to take off my 10 stop ND filter, and then I'm going to shoot the image again on a much quicker shutter speed so that I can get that detail in the clouds. But because the clouds were so thick before, I had no detail, and it just smudged across the scene, and it didn't make the image pop. It didn't do anything for the image because it's so grey and dark and moody. So once it clears up a little bit, I'm going to take that image again, I'm going to keep my camera in exactly the same place, shoot it again, and then when I get back to Photoshop later on, I'll blend them 2 images together. So I've got the detail in the clouds and then the slow moving water, so it's not just a big smudge across the sky. But anyway, this next waterfall, I've shot it before, I'm not that bothered. It doesn't look that great. There's not really enough water going down it to give it that wow factor. So I'm going to finish the vlog here, and if you do head out this weekend, I hope you have a nice time, and I hope you're inspired by the images I got here today. Go find some water, go do some long exposures. I hope you learned some tricks and tips. Yeah, anyway, I'll see you next time.